This is Splash, a free arts workshop based in Chattanooga, Tennessee. These videos are a series of remote art classes for youth and can be found on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Number 64, Playing with Watercolors.
Hello, hello, hello. We're here. We're here one more Saturday, and I'm excited about being in the studio. And I hope that you are excited about being in your studio, whether it's your kitchen table, your living room floor, or your bedroom floor, or you have an easel, or a drafting table. No matter what you have or don't have, it don't matter. You can do this on your front porch. It don't matter. Just make some art. I'm Charlie Newton, and this is Splash. Today, we're going to look at some abstract expressionist work, and we're going to look at art by Sam Francis and Joan Mitchell. I think we're going to look at Joan Mitchell's art first. So, abstract expressionism is a type of contemporary, it really falls into the modern art. It's modern art. It's not contemporary necessarily, but it's modern art. And people like Joan Mitchell and Sam Francis were the new abstract expressionists. They were not a part of the original school of abstract expressionism. Basically, what abstract expressionists say is that the art itself is an object, basically. The art is an object. So the structure, the support system, which is the canvas or the paper, we're going to use paper today, that's part of what makes it art. It's not necessarily you seeing something that looks realistic to you, like art that represents an apple or a glass or a cup. So now, the abstract expressionists are trying to be a little bit more emotional. They're trying to put emotion into their art. Some are consider themselves spiritual, and in days to come, we're going to go a little bit more in depth. But what I want you to know is that the artwork lives inside of you, and all you have to do is pay attention to what you're doing. And if you like drawing or painting, you know how you get by yourself. You get by yourself and you use your instincts to make the marks. And we're going to do that type of painting today. We can't say it's right or wrong, okay? As long as you give 100% is right. You don't grade it. You don't get an A or a B or an F. You cannot fail. You can only succeed. So what we do in Splash, we just try to show you some techniques that you might be able to use to enhance your artwork. Okay, so today, let's put up the first image, Anthony. It's probably Joan Mitchell, I'm thinking. I want you guys to look at this picture. And I just want you to kind of relax your mind and not try to figure out what it is. If the artist wants you to know what it is, they'll tell you. Okay, which picture do you have up? Because I can't tell.
One with mainly blue, blue, yellow, rose of blue. Show me.
I can't see it on here, on my phone. I can't see it. So I don't even see the, wait a minute, I may see it now. No, I don't even see it.
Kind of like blotches, they look like blotches of flowers.
I don't even see the stream. Okay, now it's coming in now. So you can put that picture up. Okay. So we have a slight delay because I'm looking on my phone to see what picture she has up. But if you put that picture up again, no, it's important that tell you what, I can just, okay. That's a picture by Joan Mitchell. I see this picture. And this is actually 2 panels. You might see a dividing line in between it. 2 panels, 2 canvases, okay? And we call them panels because it's what's called a diptych. 2 panels put together to make one. And I don't remember the name of this particular painting, but I do remember what it is. This is a landscape painting. So as your eye goes from left to right, you can see some dividing lines or areas or planes, of color and brushstrokes. And this is called abstract expressionism. So this is her emotional reaction to the painting. Let's put up another one. Let's put up the next one. We're going to look at some art first this time, so that when we start painting, you'll have an idea. So I want you to look closely at this art. I think the next one has this is by Joan Mitchell too, an abstract expressionist artist. She's one of the new expressionists, neo-expressionists. What you'll notice with her art is that, and these are done in acrylics or oil paints, and you notice that the background is the white of the canvas. Instead of painting the canvas with white or with another color, she just used the raw canvas that's been gessoed, that has when I say gessoed, it has a base on it, underpainting, but it's gesso, it's not actually paint, but it's a primer. And she's just making brush strokes. And she called this painting, sunflowers. And you wouldn't think of sunflowers, because sunflowers are usually bright yellow. But if you think about the shapes, you might think about sunflowers. And look how she allows the paint to drip. A painting like this, let me put, like the original painting would be worth millions, but a copy, a print, would be worth thousands. And it's just because of who she is. This is modern art. It's not even contemporary art, but it's modern art. And contemporary art goes even further. And when I say modern art, I'm thinking about this is the art of the 60s, 70s. Now let's go to the next slide. I think we're going to see a piece by Sam Francis. Now Sam Francis, he painted in acrylics and watercolors. He also painted large, and his painting is going to look sort of like our painting, what we're going to do. And you can see this oval-like shape, and you see blotches of paint and color. You could do this with acrylics on canvas, which this is an acrylic on canvas painting. But you can make a painting like this on paper, like what we're going to do today. And I'll show you how to do that technique. You see this circle of canvas that's white in the center of this oval shape. I'm going to show you why that happened. Okay, so you see a lot of drips and splashes and spills and things like that. But this is probably a large painting. Now let's put up the next picture. Yes, and this is Sam Francis in his studio. And I wanted you to see this so that you could see how large his paintings are. He also did small paintings. So, can you make this like fill the screen, that picture?
Oh, to a certain extent,
Okay.
because of its portrait size and not.
Right. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, so that's okay then. But you can see on the floor, he would actually roll out his canvases on the floor, paint them, let them dry, and roll them back up. And whenever it's time for him to have an exhibition, he would stretch those canvases. They were so large, he had to roll them out on the floor. But he also did watercolors like what we're going to do today. As small as the ones we're doing today, 9 by 12s. So his paintings might be like 10 feet by 20 feet or 9 inches by 12 inches. So this is abstract expressionism. Even though these are abstract pictures, it's not easy to keep your colors clean and to control your colors, and it's not easy to control the image. So now let us play. Okay? So what I want you to do, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to get a round brush, get the largest brush you can get. If you can use a large flat brush if you want to, or you could use a round brush. This is my large round brush. You may not have a round brush this big. If not, just use a flat brush. So I'll start off with a flat, what we call a bright, and we'll start off with that. It needs to be soft, and we're going to do a wash. We're going to start, we're not even going to use paint. We're going to start with water. So you're going to dip your brush in the water. And what I want you to do is paint an oval shape with water. Make sure that your brush is full of water. Don't spend a lot of time doing that. I want to make sure your paper is very wet. Just paint an oval shape. And then watch what I'm going to do. Just drip some water. Just shake your brush off on the paper. I don't know where the water is going. Okay. We're going to use a lot of water for this painting. This is a painting after Sam Francis. Now I want you to get a small round brush. A small round brush. Maybe a number 6. And dip your brush. Let's use the light colors first because it's easier. I'm going to use yellow. I use a lot of yellow. Yeah. And just dab your yellow into the water and on the paper, wherever you want to. And watch what happens. When the paint hits the water, the paint begins to spread. And it will leave a line, a water line. We're not going to blow dry this picture because if I blow dry it, what's going to happen, I'm going to put some yellow on the outside too and around the edges. Francis was very aware of the edges of his picture. And I think it has to do with that. He could also be considered, if his work wasn't so active, he could be considered a color field painter, but he's not a color field painter because even though his works show a mastery of color, his mind was more about emotions. So I need to find my paper towel to clean my brush off. Now you can use whatever colors you want to make this abstract painting, but allow you see these lines, that the water lines, don't destroy those edges there. I'm going to get maybe a bright orange so that you can see some of the edges. You see how this spreads, but it will make a straight edge here? That's because you have wet paper next to dry paper. Now, everywhere you think you're going to use your second color, place it on your paper. And if you don't know where you're going to use it, then go to your next color. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to paint my picture, and you paint yours. You can also do this. Watch. You can throw paint. You can splash the paint. Like splash. Youth Arts Workshop, we splash paint. You can have fun with it. I think I want to use a green. Sam Francis, he loves to use green, and so do I. I might interrupt this wet spot. So your picture is drying, but some places still have water that's pooled. If you want to, you can always re-wet your paper. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to get my flat brush again. I'm just going to dip it in water, clear water, and in certain places, I'm going to be very careful, and I'm going to just wet the paper. So we're painting with water. Remember I said watercolors should look like water. Now, Sam Francis would have painted with, now this is, I'm going to change some of this so it's not just an oval. You don't need to do that unless you want to. Your shapes could have been like squares or triangles or whatever type of shape you want to use. I always try to avoid using too many colors. Now, when I'm teaching. When I'm not teaching, I may use a lot of colors, but everything needs to be balanced so that the art looks good. Something about human beings, we are always seeking balance. Balance in our lives, balance with our diet, balance is very important, and that's because of gravity. So, how's that because of gravity? Well, psychologically, what happens is when we're born, the first things that we deal with as human beings is balance. And when things are out of balance, you begin to have some issues. So balance is always on our minds, in our subconscious, if nothing else. You can overlay colors, but just watch what you're doing. Now I'm going to use red. I'm going to splash a little red on here. I really like the way Sam Francis uses red. So what I'm doing now is I'm learning from the artist Sam Francis. Now this is my art because I'm not copying his work, but I'm learning from him. Now, this is not the type of painting that I do normally, but I can incorporate some of these techniques that I'm learning by experimenting into my own art practice. I'm going to blend this red into this purple a little bit, so I just wet my brush. I'm just going to bring some of that over into the purple. Now, I don't have enough on my paper. Sam Francis was very, well, he was, let me put it like this. He was very mindful of his life and what he was facing in life. He started painting like this actually when he got sick. I think he developed a blood disease, if I'm not mistaken. I need to go back. I did not go back and read the history of St. Francis. I haven't even thought about him until our last class I mentioned him. And that's why I decided to come back today and show you some of his artwork. So if I'm not mistaken, he had a blood disease that was cancerous. And it changed the way he made a picture. And it's changed his picture into this. So if you can imagine blood vessels and, the chemistry of the human body and what might be happening. And this is not a perfect example of St. Francis, what St. Francis was thinking about. But the point I'm trying to make is that he was very internal, his thinking, his art was expressing his feelings. He thought about death, that he's not going to live too long, but he continued to paint. And his art can be seen in all over the world, but not like a Joan Mitchell. I remember when I first saw St. Francis' work, it was just so beautiful. And the first time I learned about St. Francis is I saw a picture of him in his studio, an overhead shot. And man, it was like, look at those huge canvases. He was standing on his canvases. He was working. It was I think a brochure that I first saw for his exhibition in Los Angeles. And this was probably in the 90s or late 80s. I had never heard of St. Francis. So he's not as widely known as some of the other abstract expressionists. But even though abstract expressionism wasn't my cup of tea, beauty is. And the beauty of his art drew me to him. And I've been in galleries, upscale galleries in New York and England, and I'm always excited to see a St. Francis work. I've been in museums where I haven't seen a St. Francis work, but I'm always excited to see his art. And of course, my work is nowhere near as beautiful as his. I'm looking at what I'm doing, and it's nowhere near as beautiful. But we're using some of his techniques. I'm going to do something that he might have done. I'm going to get my wide brush again, and I'm going to mix to his ovals, but then he also did straight lines. I'm going to mix that into this and see if that makes my art look better. Let's see, what color could I use? Magenta. Let's see what. See how the water has pooled, and when I just tap the water. And oh yeah, I'm going to show you something else you can do too. I'd like for you to try. See that line there? Isn't that nice? I don't even have to do anything to that. That I might do a little bit. Put a little bit there. I'm trying to balance this picture now. I cannot add different colors and think that my picture is going to be balanced. So I'm not going to. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay my brush on the side and do a line. I'll do one here. Just lay it on the side. Okay, now this is I'm beginning to see something now. Something that I can hang a hat on. Well, what I did was I shook this magenta off in the water. Now I'm going to go back to the first color that we used, which is yellow. And I'm going to try something and use that same technique. It didn't work too good. I need more water in my brush. I'm going to do it again. I don't like that. So now I'm going to put even more water in the brush. I want this to flow the edges. So I started small so I can go larger and it's okay. So I don't have a plan. I don't know what it's going to look like. Okay. So now the picture is telling me what needs to happen. I say that a lot. And that's why you can't play with your neighbor in art class and make a good painting. And then splash what we want. And some kids, you just come in and you do your work and you do awesome work and you're focused. But sometimes it's hard for us to focus because we're with our friends. I understand that. But once we start painting, that was a good stroke there. Once we start painting, then we want to focus. I like what's happening here, how the water has pooled, but I need to put another color in there. Now let me show you what I want to do. We're going to stop with San Francisco, and we're going to do something sort of like Joan Mitchell. So what you can do, some of this water has not dried. So I'm just going to play now, okay? I don't know what's going to happen. So I can turn the paper up and see how I can let things run. I can still try to have some control. I'm going to let that run that way. Now, I need to know when to stop, okay? And I'm going to stop right now. Now I'm going to critique myself and see what's happened. What happened was, I hate that this ran into that yellow, but I stopped it just in time, so I still have that little bit of yellow right here at the top. When the red hit the green, whenever red and green come into contact, it's going to make a brown, okay? Because these are opposite colors on the color wheel. So this turned brown. I don't know if I like brown. You know what I'm going to do? Since I don't like brown, I'm going to add one more element. Now, all these little details, I don't even know if you can see these little small details. Maybe we can get a close-up. I love those little small details, those little flecks of color here. So just for fun, I'm going to use black. I'm going to get a matter of fact, I'm going to get the smallest brush I can find. And you don't have to do this because this can mess up your picture, okay? I just want to show you all the possibilities, to give you something to think about. That's why we go to art shows. I go to art shows, number one, because I love art, to enjoy the art. That's the main reason I go. But sometimes I'll see something that blows my mind, It blows me away. Then I try to figure out how they did it. And unintentionally, I'm not trying to copy their work, but it ends up showing up in my work. Sooner or later, it might be 10 years later. But since I don't like that brown, I'm going to try something that probably will not work. I'm going to try to draw a couple of black lines, because black is so much darker than brown, it will create a strong contrast. So this is actually drawing. So I'm getting the smallest brush I can find. I dipped it in the water, but I don't want my brush to be very wet. So I'm giving this picture a little bit more depth with the black. I'm just drawing some lines in places. I actually want to, and I didn't bring my sponge. When you're doing watercolors, you should have a sponge available. So I'm just going to use my paper. I twisted my paper. This is it's not tissue paper, but it's a paper towel, and I'm gently using it as a sponge. I don't like how that looks, so I keep working on it. I'm trying to take some water up, and I just did. I just used my brush as a sponge too. Now I'm going back with some black. I'm going to go back into here with some black. And I think I can live with that. See, there's a pool of water here. I don't like that, so I'm going to use my paper towel as a sponge. It's hard for me to, sometimes I get so much into what I'm doing that it's hard for me to talk, okay, and teach and keep up with what I'm saying, so you have to forgive me. Too much water here too. So I'm looking at all this stuff. I'm taking everything into consideration. I'm telling you that so that you will focus on the little things. I do not want to blow dry this because it will move things around, and I don't want to move anything around. Do you like the addition of these little black areas? I'm being very careful, and very selective, to where I think I can put some little areas of black or dark paint. And hopefully it gives it maybe volume, or it opens the picture up a little bit. Well, it does, because black is such a heavy color that the eye goes straight to the black. And there's a contrast between the black paint and the white paper, and it begins to open this picture up a little bit. So that's it. I'm going to carefully lay this picture to the side. And now let's see if we can do something reminiscent of Joan Mitchell. Can we put up one of her pictures again, Iantha? So I'll just tape the edges of the paper just to hold the paper down. Water, what it does is it makes the paper, it stretches the paper, okay? Well, not the water. Water and tape stretches the paper, but water would make the paper draw up. So if I wanted to keep it from buckling, I would just put tape all around the edge. But I don't mind if there's a little buckle in most of my abstract expressionist works. because for me it adds a little sculpture to it. But I suggest for you that you make a decision whether you want to keep your paper from buckling or not. This is 90-pound paper, so it can take a lot of water without buckling, too much, but it will buckle some. Now, with Joan Mitchell, let's go ahead and get a brush that's, we could call this a medium size flat brush. And maybe this is too big. Get a smaller one. I don't know. I guess I may have a smaller one somewhere. A bright or a flat brush. Get a small one. Smallest one you can find. That one may work. And if we can put up one of Joan Mitchell's pictures, I want you to see that what she does is she usually paints on easels. She don't, not really on an easel. She will hang her painting on a wall. And so you would see the paint drip. She allows the paint to drip because it's on a wall or an easel, but it's upright. But her paintings are so huge, they're not usually going to be on an easel. And you see these sunflowers, it's mostly about brush strokes. You can see her meditating. Maybe she's been out in the fields of France, and she's has seen a field of sunflowers, but it's not about the color. It's about the impression that it makes on her. And so she goes back into her studio and she paints a memory of her impression. Now, an art critic could explain this better than I, because the job of the art critic is to put into words the work of art. The art historian's job is to give us everything that they can give about when that artist was, why that artist was, and the significance of that. But the artist's job is to look and learn, and I'm an artist, okay? So I may not explain this. All I can explain is what I perceive when I'm looking at a work of art, what I'm picking up. So we have tulips in our yard. So now I'm putting mine on tulips. Now we have irises, don't we, Iantha?
Yeah, irises.
Yeah, and I've been noticing the irises. And I've noticed that the yellow irises, the purple, well, see what showed up first? The yellow ones showed up first, but I like the purple ones. And it always show up around Easter too, around Mother's Day and Easter. So I'm just gonna paint my impression of irises, my feelings. I'm not trying to draw an iris, but I'm imitating or emulating Joan Mitchell. So remember, with abstract expressionism, this whole sheet of paper, is a work of art. Once I start painting, now it's about shape, form, color, balance. Those things, the foundations of art. How is this rectangle going to be balanced? I have a problem to work out. That's the problem. That's the artistic problem. No, we're going to get some yellow. So I'm not trying to, I don't care that much about water, even though this is a water medium. Now I care about this object. A sheet of paper is an object, and this object has paint on it. Now, please hear this. Please hear this. If I painted an iris realistically, I have the same issues, the same problems. It's the same problem, identical problem. The only difference is I'm not so concerned about my marks looking like a representation or a photograph of an iris. I understand that even if this is realistic, it is not real. I want to keep illustrating this to you. So, this is a painting we did a couple of classes ago of a landscape in watercolors. So, I want you to know that these are clouds. I want you to know that these are trees. I want you to know that this is a little pond or something. But I have the same technical art problems with this representation, this representational picture, as I do with this abstract expressionist picture. Same issues, balance, color, shape. Because this is not a landscape. This looks like a landscape. This is not a tree. This is a painting of a tree on a sheet of paper. Okay? This is watercolor on a sheet of paper. Just like this. Does that make sense, Ayantha? Okay. So, really, painting is a lot like math. I was an advanced math student, believe it or not, in high school. And I got my first job because of that. This was in 1971. After graduating from high school, the telephone company was South Central Bell. And my best friend was the first black person to be hired in 1971 by South Central Bell. I was the second black person. And it was because I was hired not because of my art ability, but because of my math skills. And why am I telling you this? I'm telling you that painting is a lot like working out a math problem. The brain kind of operates in the same way. I had a friend when I was in graduate school, well, I'll say an acquaintance, my friend's friend. My friend introduced me to this guy who was a musician, a keyboard player. And NASA hired him because of his skills on the keyboard. You cannot separate art from life. Art, I'm getting on my high horse now. I want you guys to know how important this is. If you have art ability, art is a multi-billion-dollar business. Okay? And there are several billionaires, artists today, who paint just like this. Okay? So, like a lot of things, you have to sort of learn it. It's like a different language. Art is a visual language. And if you don't know it, how can you judge something you don't know? I was saying that to somebody in the art community a couple of weeks ago. How can you make judgments about something you know nothing about? I talked to a friend of mine last night about that too. And we were talking about education. How can you make judgment calls about education and you're not a teacher? You never taught, you never studied. You know, you're not an educator, yet you are making judgment calls and our kids are suffering because of it. Well, why can I say stuff like that? Because all this is in your art. Your art is you, unapologetically you. And if it's not you, then it's not as valuable. You need to understand that you are valuable. So some people will say some disparaging things about artists. You know, artists are weird. People have said that to my face. You know, artists are weird. I never say nothing about it. We're not weird. We're just artists. Where would the world be without art? We need artists. We need you to use your talent and your ability. The world needs you. We need imagination and storytelling. Okay, I'm off my art bandwagon now. But what you do is important, and you are important, no matter what other people say. That's why I always encourage you, do your best. If you do your best, that's good enough. Try your best. Nothing beats a failure but a try. So I cannot paint like Joan Mitchell. I guess you guys get that now, right? This is nothing like what she would do. I mean, I'm going to stop talking and see if I can straighten this up a little bit. It would be nice if I could paint like Joan Mitchell. She's unique. One of the greatest female artists or male artists. She's female, but she's one of the greatest artists that ever lived. But I want you to know that she's female. Because sometimes the art world can be inundated with male figures. So, I want you to know that no matter who you are or where you come from, you can do this. And if nobody appreciates you, appreciate yourself. And enjoy. I mean, I'll tell you, some Splash kids are amazing. They amaze me. And that's why we put them in art shows. If you're in an art show, a Splash art show, it's because you are exceptional. We don't put anything in the art show. We don't put everybody in the art show. I look at you as an artist. And I'm not going to have your picture hanging up next to somebody who did not give 100%. Because I wouldn't do that with my own artwork. I don't exhibit with everybody. Because I respect my field of study. This is my life. Oh, and I heard somebody say the other day, because I hang around artists and, you know, for the first time in years, I'm taking a course, but I'm taking a course about art and architecture because of some things that's happening in Chattanooga. So I want to learn more and try to find out, how do you articulate the importance of architecture to the community? Anyway, and this artist was saying that once the art bug hits you, you can't get rid of it. And I want parents to know, you can say anything you want to your kids about why they shouldn't do art or why they shouldn't be artists and why they should try to make money. And they may do everything in their power to please you, but they will always return to art because that's who they are. And I think it's better to encourage them. And Splash, we're here to encourage, and so that your talent won't go to waste. They will always return to art. And another thing, a person who's an artist will never be happy until they are doing what they love. It's not always about money. You spend your life chasing money and never be who you are, and you'll be unhappy. So if you have that art bug, mark my words, it's not going to leave just because people won't let you do it or tell you to do something else with your life. It's never going to leave. And that's why some people turn to full-time art when they retire, when they could have been doing art all that time and enjoying their life. So what I'm doing now is I cannot paint like Joan Mitchell, but I can paint like Charlie Newton. So I'm trying to fix this painting by painting like me. I can't do a Joan Mitchell now. I will have to study her probably a few more years. Okay, now what do I need to do? I need to bring some of this blue down here. I'm trying to control what the water does. Okay. So in order for me to paint like me, all of a sudden I'm back to painting more like Sam Francis. Because Joan Mitchell, her stuff would just be dry brush, man. And that's another artist. What is his name? Man, oh wow, I can't think of his name now. I was just looking at his work last night. Starts with a G. His work can only be found mostly in museums because he decided that he didn't want he did one gallery show, probably in the 60s or something, 50s or 60s. And he decided he didn't want to deal with galleries. Clifford Steele. So sometimes I had to start talking about, and this is not an artist, he's not an artist that I look at a lot. I'm going to write his name down on this tape. Cliff Elman. So see, there's an auction that's happening this weekend in Japan of his artwork, and that they have a painting of his on auction, which is rare because you can't find his paintings in galleries. You can only find them in museums, or he has a museum, his own Clifford Steele. He's not alive now, but the Clifford Steele Museum is in Texas. I think it's San Antonio, but I'm not sure. So in order to see his work, it's hard to see his work. His work is worth something like $800 million or something like that. Anyway, I brought him up because Joan Mitchell's work reminds me of Clifford Steele, but Clifford Steele's work is even less. I'll show you what his work sort of looks like. Joan Mitchell will use a lot of brush strokes, but Clifford Steele would use he would use a lot of brush strokes, but he would use a small number of shapes. So he might use a small brush like this, right? And let me just do it. He would limit his color So you might have a shape like this, a huge shape like that, on a large canvas, okay? And then somewhere else you have another shape that would be, let's do it, it would be neutral. I'm going to use brown. I may mix this brown with red or something, or green. I'll probably mix it with green because I want to make this brown neutral. Yeah, I'm going to mix it with green. So less is more in his work. When you go to art school, you hear people talking about less is more. You hear a lot of that. You might have something like that. And just imagine if this is a huge canvas the size of a wall. You know, so like this could be 12 feet by 18 feet. Something like that, you know, something large. Then he may decide, well, I need another shape. What color should it be? And where should it be? And how large should it be? What I did was I dipped my brown brush. I shook off my brush in the water, but it wasn't clean, so it changed this orange. This orange is a very day glow orange here. So I'm going to clean my paint off. I'm going to clean this off. And I'm going to clean my brush again. So control everything. Remember, control everything. You have to look at what's going on, what you're doing, because you are in control. I mean, everything that happens, you're the one doing it. Nobody else is doing it. The paint is not painting itself. Now, where should this be? I just instinctively want to put it there. It still seems like I have some brown in this brush, so I'm going to just get a different brush. I'm going to get a stiff brush. If I can find one. You know what? The water probably has brown in it. Then he might do a stroke like that. Now, to explain what this means, I'm not that familiar with him. I haven't studied this guy, you know. All I know is that he's part of the abstract expressionist school, one of the new expressionists. This would be the painting. This painting, I can see why the Japanese would have this painting. This painting was owned by a private, well, not this painting, but the painting that I saw that was worth $800 million. It was owned by a private collector, and somehow Sotheby's got hold of it or whatever. Maybe he had to sell it, or maybe he died or something, and it was part of his, collection, and Sotheby's got it. But I can see why the Japanese would have a painting that sort of looked like this, because of the feng shui, the meditative quality. You can the energy, the silence. So, man, how time flies when you're having fun. I have fun doing this. I can't wait to get back into my studio and do some huge paintings. I can't wait. I'm going to rearrange my studio so that I can do some huge canvases. I've been inspired. I've inspired myself. The art of Clifford Steele has inspired me. The art of Sam Francis has inspired me. The art of Joan Mitchell has inspired me. Teaching you this class has inspired me. I'm ready to go. Let's go and make some art. And remember, until next time, art is for everyone. Bye-bye.